It's season 2 of Rabbit Holes with Aaron. We're going to be trying some new things. We've got enhanced Rabbit Holes with Aaron episodes on Patreon. Welcome to Rabbit Holes with Aaron. I'm the host, Aaron, and today as my guest I have Michael Shokrian. He's the editor-in-chief and the publisher for Thieving Magpies, and it's kind of enigmatic. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
So the question we came to is, what's a question you've been carrying around that you haven't found an answer for yet?
Okay. And my answer was and is my question that I haven't found an answer to yet is how I see myself in a Polaroid picture, how I can be defined, what I look like in the eyes of a 10-year-old version of myself. And I say that because when I was a 10-year-old, I used to see my parents hang out with their friends a lot, and I'd see pictures and Polaroids of my parents with their friends, and all of the adults in those pictures looked like they had real lives and real definition of character and a place in society. And it was always, something that I admired, and I thought to myself, would I ever be one of those adults that's in one of those pictures, with the, in those days they had sideburns and mustaches and long hair and stuff like that. And it really stuck with me. And I always thought to myself, when am I going to be that adult who has that life and that definition, that if they captured that person in a photograph, a kid would look at it and say, I see that person. That person is defined or has some sort of an identity. And I feel like I don't have that, and I'm always kind of looking around for it, trying to figure out, where do I fit in this big scheme? Who am I? How am I defined? What would a 10-year-old think if they saw a picture of me, and think, oh, that's an adult,
Yeah.
that's a grown-up? That's my question.
Okay, so the rabbit hole that I thought of when you said that, when you said a picture, a snapshot, and seeing how real the people were, like I instantly thought of a shorter word, our pitch, right? Which is completely unrelated, or only tenuously related, but our pitch, right? For every business, for every book, if you can say it in 5 words or less, that's amazing. That's a priceless pitch. If you can say it in a couple of sentences, that's okay. If you have to take all day long or write a book for a pitch, then, maybe that's a little bit too long. But I've been thinking about that a lot because really it is all about the pitch. And the pitch tells people how you see what you're trying to get them to listen to. What do you think about that?
Interesting, yes, because the pitch also involves an external entity that has to see, hear, and accept, identify that pitch. So you're not pitching to yourself against the wall. You're pitching to something or somebody that you want a reaction from.
And I can see how that relates to a picture. I mean, they sound similar, though they're different words completely. But like that picture, that snapshot, and like looking at it for 5 seconds, you get so much good, real information. Like you said, sideburns. Maybe they're holding a cigarette. Or maybe they're, holding a can of beer. There's so much history in there. There's so much 3-dimensional perspective. What do you think?
Absolutely. And I think that's one of those things that as a 10-year-old, or not, whatever, I was 8 or 9 in Los Angeles, I didn't think of myself as a writer But I did look at those Polaroids in my mom and dad's photo albums, and every one of those pictures was a story that I wanted to know about. Every person in that in those photos was a person that I was intrigued by, and I would admire them, or I would question what they were doing just before and just after the shot. I would think to myself, this is what freedom looks like, or this is what adulthood, which I equated with freedom, looks like. And so you kind of are intrigued by and also include your own stories into every photo that you see, or every Polaroid, every snapshot, based on just those images, and your own imagination.
Well, and the thing I like about the Polaroid picture too, and I just love this question, right? This question, I keep going back to it. I'm like, man, there's so much here. But with your Polaroid snapshot, you can grab it and you can say, hey, Aunt Mildred, what do you remember about this picture? And you'll get a whole other variety of stories.
So
Like,
true.
yeah, did you know your dad in this picture? He just came out of, maybe the sauna, or he just came back from Brazil, or you don't even know, until you show
Yeah.
it to different family members and you get even more of the background and more of the story.
So true. And that's the other interesting part about those Polaroids, and the queries, the questions that a kid might ask when looking at them, is that those subjects that are in those pictures, they probably don't think of the fact that they're in the picture, or that they're being perceived in a certain way by a 10-year-old kid. They're just living their lives. They have bills to pay, and they had a fight with their wife, or they're looking for, all sorts of stuff are going on in their lives that you really don't see. And you're looking at that picture as a kid, like admiring that adult, and admiring their liberated sense of adulthood that you as a kid don't have access to. And you just fantasize about who they might be. And the subjects themselves could be miserable. They could be drug addicts. They could, and if you do ask Aunt Mildred, hey, what were you doing in that picture? You say, I just got into a fight with your uncle, and I was just walking out the door, and somebody snapped this picture. They have their own entire story of what that picture meant to them, and in that point in their life.
Yeah, and you know what? Wow, that just took me to another completely different rabbit hole, and that is that every time you look at that picture, you have a different perspective as well. Now maybe you notice, what that fashion was, or we know a lot more about the 70s and 80s now looking back. Like, I was in the middle of the 80s. I didn't know it was amazing music and movies. I didn't know that it was a revolution of pop culture in America. I was
Right.
just trying to survive it, and now we can look back, for me in my 50s at the 80s, and I'm like, there's a lot of good stuff going on back then. What was the
Yeah.
secret sauce, And so we get a look over time, we get a look back at it, and different people at different ages, ourselves alone, and we get to draw even more information out of it, which is just boggling my mind.
Absolutely.
What
Absolutely.
what do you think?
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned the 80s, another rabbit hole. I did a lot of growing up in the 70s and 80s. I was in my college years. 80s were my undergraduate years.
Mm.
And in those days, I was a writer, and trying to be a writer at UCLA. And I was in the creative writing program. And I probably thought, not probably, I definitely thought I was too cool for pop culture, and too cool for, the 80s had a certain stain to the cool kids, you know. But now I look back on the 80s, and I remember that I was part of that. I was doing my most creative work in the 80s, and some of my biggest influences were those rock bands from the 80s and the filmmakers from the 80s. And now I look at the 80s completely differently. I'm like, oh, you know what? The 80s, for a child of the 70s, the 80s was something like its nerdy little brother. or not as cool little brother. Now I look at the 80s and I think, there were some serious artists that were doing really good work in the 80s. And I actually was part of it and was acknowledging it even then, but I never appreciated or respected the 80s for a cultural decade. And now I do.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, for myself as well. Like I was born in 1974, so I didn't get to. I got to I mean, I got to kindergarten in like 1979, and so like the 80s, I just lived through them, and I thought they were weird because of my economic, upbringing. It was kind of lower middle class, and so I saw people in parachute pants. I saw, people dancing MC Hammer, and I saw all these people around me, and they did look crazy to me. And
Yeah.
then I wanted to be like them to fit in. And now I look back and I'm like, there was just so much good stuff happening, and it seems like now, as far as I can speak to like the movies, like the movie quality is just like they're trying to repeat and reinvent all those movies from the 80s. They're trying to
Yeah.
reinvent everything from the 80s in a different way with, CGI and new actors and all this stuff. And it's like, you know what? I
It's not going to
mean,
work.
there was well, that, and it's something special that happened back then. It's
Yeah.
like something original, something special. It boomed, it blossomed. But yeah, I mean, we could go probably talk. It sounds like you and me could talk about the 80s for the rest of our life, and we probably will be. Is there any other rabbit hole you want to explore right now? I guess I could think about that question I asked too. Let me see what it
Um,
is.
just that, I remember that when I was graduating high school I graduated high school in 1981. And in the 70s, you were just a kid. You were just, I was born in 64, so I'm just 10 years older than you.
Okay.
But
Okay.
in the 70s, there was a fascination with the 50s. And in the 80s, there was a fascination with the 60s. And in the 90s, there was a fascination with the 70s. And I got to say, I don't want to sound like an old fart, but this century doesn't have anything that you really can look back on and think, oh, everything that I see right now from a pop culture standpoint is a reference to those decades, to the 50s, 60s, 70s, even the 80s and 90s. I haven't seen yet some good original cultural movement or artistic movement that stamps this decade or even the last decade. The 20 teens, I guess you call them, or the 2020s. I keep waiting for this new zeitgeist to pop up or to present itself. It doesn't pop up; it presents itself. But I haven't seen it, and I see a lot of iconification of our past, iconification of those 70s and 80s and 90s, and then trying to just bank on it without really contributing to it or adding on to it at all.
Yeah.
And it's sad to me because I have kids, and my kids make fun of me. I'm like a cliche. We sit in my car and we listen to Steely Dan. We listen to Dire Straits. We listen to whatever music. We live in my music, and we have a constant battle about that. And I miss the days when there was musicians who could play an instrument. Playing an instrument it shows a certain type of hand-eye coordination, and there's a certain brilliance that's associated with being able to physically make music with your hands and some utensils. Whether it's
Yeah.
a guitar or a piano or a drum, and I don't see that. And I mean, I hear a lot of my kids' music. It's mostly, rap music, and the lyrics are, you can debate the beauty of the lyrics, but the music itself, it's just not very musical, and I miss that. was good
Yeah.
days. People had instruments.
Wow. Now, I think we really did explore that rabbit hole pretty well. Um, yeah, good job. Thank you. Like, there's a place to live here now. I mean, in this rabbit hole. Um, yeah, I'm thinking about. Well, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna grab it and go back to the question. What's a question that I've been carrying around that I haven't found an answer to yet? Um, well, okay, we're just gonna go there. Like beyond, like what is beyond this for me in my identity, in my growth, in my own life journey, and in your life journey. What's next? Like I I'm still walking past all my previous goals in my life, right? Obviously I'm not a trillionaire. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not driving my own car that I made for myself. I mean, I drink coffee out of my own cup I made for myself because I got into pottery for a while. I got into beekeeping. I keep pushing myself and setting these milestones like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to start business. Okay, well, I created a successful part-time business. Now this podcast is going on. And I'm like, wow, what's next, Aaron? And I'm just kind of, it's like sitting in a waiting posture, listening and looking for what pulls my curiosity next. And then every once in a while, sitting back and letting all the doors close and seeing what new door opens or if those doors open back up again. And that's kind of what's going on for me in Thailand right now. So that's why it's on top of my mind is like, where do you go when you don't have any goals left to accomplish? I mean, I guess you make more, obviously. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, so that's the question. I'm not even going to answer it. I'm just going to leave the question, and maybe for my listeners and for you. But what do you think about that?
Uh, I think if that's where you are, you, Aaron, are there, I kind of envy you because honestly, um, I'm still trying to achieve some goals that I've been carrying for decades, including my writing and my
Yeah,
publishing life. And those things are still out of reach, but within reach. And so I haven't gotten to that place where I'm like, what's next? Of course,
yeah,
what does happen for a person in my situation is that a lot of living and a lot of life happens while you're uh, reaching and expending all your efforts and energy trying to reach those goals that you set for yourself. So for example, I wanted, since I was in my early 20s, to be a writer and to write and do that for a living. And as I was trying to do that, I had a bunch of jobs and I had a bunch of relationships, and I got married. I went to law school. I became a
wow,
lawyer. Yeah, I fell in love for the last time and the best time, and I had three kids, and I moved to a house, in the suburbs, and then I built another house in the sub. I did a lot of living that sometimes I worried that I walked right past or sped through because
hmm,
I was always focused on the writing and getting the writing done and getting the writing out there and my true goal, my heart, you know. And so sometimes you forget that thing that I think it was John Lennon or somebody else said, which is that life happens while you're making plans to do other
yeah,
things. And so I do appreciate that I've had a very blessed life because I've managed to survive and to have love in my life and have a family that I'm building and growing, and I'm still able to pursue that goal of writing. American Playground is my first novel, and I'm working on the next one, and hopefully I won't drop dead before I get all the writing done that I still want to get done. you know. So I think
yeah.
things. I mean, I don't know if you are a true entrepreneur, you're probably just your next thing is your next big venture, and you're always going to be, stumbling or walking into or figuring out your next challenge that you're going to turn into a business opportunity for yourself when it presents itself.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And yeah, I was thinking because of course I said my answer, and I guess it does sound grandiose a bit. And I'm not saying every goal that I've ever encountered I have conquered and walked right over it. 5 stars or 10 stars would recommend. But it's not exactly that way. But I guess that's the question I ask myself. Because yes, am I in the middle of writing a fiction novel that I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day? Yes, I am. So have I accomplished every single goal I've set out for? No, I have not. But there's so many,
Yeah.
as an example that I have that I ask that question occasionally of myself, and I'm like, okay, for an example, I just sat down at a table with past Aaron and future Aaron, and we all got along and had a conversation through my poetry. So that was kind of like, well, when you come into peace, complete or mostly complete peace within yourself, and there's no longer a civil war, well, what do you do next? Because everybody's in the middle of a civil war. I was in the middle of a civil war where I'm only fighting with myself, where I have one side that says I don't feel like doing that, and have the other side that says, well, you need to do that. And it's kind of this conflict raging, and it spills out onto other people in light ways.
Yeah.
I guess the bigger the conflict, the more it spills out into other people's lives, and of course we see that all the time,
Yes.
um, in different areas of society these days. But yeah, when you get every part of yourself to sit down at the table and say, you know what, I'll buy in. Yes, I'll be here, and it's instead of one errand, there's like 10 errands, for example, and then you're like, wow, what can we get done with this kind of inner peace?
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm kind of contemplating that question, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And actually that's exactly you used the right words there because um, everybody, whether they know it or not, um, is trying to find that inner peace and trying to find that. In our household, we call it shalom. We're like,
Mm,
I just want to find my shalom, you know, and that's what everybody's is striving for. They're striving for that inner peace and a resolution of whatever inner conflicts are driving you and motivating you and scratching at you. Um, I don't know that we ever get that perfect shalom, that perfect inner peace that we think we are seeking. Um, as evidenced by what you're saying right now, because you had those conversations with the past and future errands, and you're still asking questions. So the conflict or the query never really ends, and that's a good thing. It motivates you to keep moving forward and to keep searching and to keep climbing, and that's what we do. We're always looking for this more perfect union. Since we're close to the 4th of July,
there you go.
we're
Quoting
looking,
Abraham Lincoln.
yeah, the more perfect union is something that really doesn't ever happen. It's something that you are striving for, and that's really the challenge is to keep striving. And another quote that somebody, I don't know who said it, but it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of pursuit. And so
Mm,
you're supposed to be pursuing at all times, and you're supposed to enjoy the pursuit of it. You're supposed to enjoy the challenge of trying to reach that next post. Um, you know, I don't know if you ski, but I used to ski a lot when I was younger, and you go up these very scary mountains, and when you take to get off the lift, you look down the hill, and it's got all these bumps and all these moguls, and that you have to get around, and it looks really frightening before you take that leap. And as you go down the hill, or as I used to go down the hill, all I wanted to do was not break something. I didn't. I just
Yeah.
wanted to survive it. So I was always like struggling and worried and going around these little bumps and turns and everything. And then I would go down the hill, and 3/4 of the way down, I would stop and turn back and look back up at the hill, just to look at the mountain that I just came down, and what a challenge it was, and what how amazing it is that I managed to get that far. So the next time up, I had to remember that that the challenge is the thing. The whole point of it is to get down there and enjoy the ride down. If you have that inner peace to do that, that's really what we're all striving for, to accept the challenges and to be happy that we are being challenged and that we are pursuing it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I like that. I like everything you said. The thing that stuck with me was like the happiness of the pursuit. And I think to change gears real quick and go down a rabbit hole, like I think of that with my relationship with my wife, Jill. It's like, well, there's a song we like to listen to, and it's something like Never Stop, Never Stop. I think actually that's the name of it. It's a wedding song. It's called Never Stop, but it's like I'll never stop opening the door for you. I'll never stop watching you when you leave. I'll never stop. All these kind of hallmarks of relationship pursuing the other person. I think that's kind of a
Yeah.
really golden attribute to hold on to. And, we don't just do it with our spouses. I'm pursuing a few other people. I pursued you for the podcast. You pursued me to get on the podcast.
Yeah.
And so, and it kind of reflects back to me too. Man, I'm just going to walk past 10 rabbit holes here, but like the barter system and how relationships are not transactional ideally, but they're kind of like a barter. But in this barter, you bring just a little bit more than is expected. And,
Yeah.
that's how you build your reputation, being just a little bit more generous than the other person expects. And then you build this relationship with people that way that's fair, that's generous, that's valid, that's reciprocal. And these are all hallmarks of being healthy,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I talked about a lot of things. Pick something out. What do you think?
No, I agree. And you took the word right out of my mouth, which is reciprocal. It's human beings exist on that basis of reciprocity, and it reflects in everything from the Bible to business transactions to civilization itself. It's about reciprocity. You do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You treat somebody fair because you want to be treated fair, but it's always a relationship. It's not a transaction in that cold meaning of the word, but it is a relationship that requires give and take. That's part of the deal. You're married, I'm married. There's give and take. I have siblings. There's give and take in that relationship. I have associates. So everything is about that, and in fact, I think most people in society are probably judged on how they handle the give and take of life, how they handle the give and take of human relationships. And we have people right now in government and in other seats of power who just take. And that is not doesn't go unnoticed. It doesn't go unnoticed that there's a lot of taking going on. There's not a lot of giving going on. The word that we use when we want to say we've been bamboozled by somebody is that I've been taken. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Yep.
if there's a lot of taking and not a lot of giving, there's going to be resentment. There's going to be anger. There's going to be a breakdown of communications and relationships. Reciprocity makes humanity run. So yeah, it's a big word.
Wow. Yeah, thank you for pulling that out. And I think about these people, and I think about, oh, that was making me think about the codependency kind of triangle, right? Somebody gives too much, they're an overgiver, and then they line up with an overtaker, and then they enter this triangle
Oof.
of giving too much and getting resentful, and then distance, and then they're drawn back in with giving too much or taking too much, and then, and so on and so forth, and
Yeah.
people's kind of patterns align. And of course, that's been a little bit of my story is I'm really realizing lately that I like to have something explained to the person in advance instead of letting it unfold naturally, like as fast as possible so that they understand as soon as possible. Gosh, I'm trying to think of a way. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Kind of. You're talking about being upfront and being, cards on the table, kind of,
Well,
when it comes.
kind of, and times 10. So it's not just hey, my name is Aaron, we're doing a podcast. It's the best podcast ever. You need to be on it. We're going to have a great conversation, and I'm really overselling it, I guess, to some extent.
Right.
And you maybe you haven't experienced that, and if you haven't, God bless you. I'm learning every day, but yeah, it's kind of I have this inclination to try and apologize in advance, oversell, explain in advance, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm really working hard on falling back onto a structure and falling back onto the barter system, falling back on the reciprocity of
Yeah.
I invite you into my life and all I do is ask, hey, you want to have coffee? And then like I forget about it completely and let until the other side says, I think coffee would be great. How about Thursday? And then I take my side again and I'm like, it's my turn. And I'm kind of moving slower and enjoying the dance of it
Yeah.
more. Does that make sense?
Yes. That does make sense. Um, I think that, those kind of things are sort of, again, that little engine that makes things go forward, and that back and forth.
Mm,
The back and
yeah.
forth sort of builds trust, and helps to build a budding relationship. Um, and so I think sometimes that what you just described, it happens even unconsciously. It's not something that anybody does, you know. But I think you're right. I think, every start of every relationship, um, there are expectations, I suppose, or there's a pitch, as we started out saying.
Ooh, okay.
And
Yeah.
and is that pitch going to be accepted, or is it not going to be accepted? So those things are there. They're all around us all the time.
Well, and as an example to share a brief story, like I met, we've been hanging out with what are they called? Digital nomads here in Thailand that we
Yes.
got invited. Jill found an event on Meetup and they have a little bit longer passport situation and all they got to do, I think, is verify they've got money coming in from an online business. And then they can live here. Well, they get together once in a while. We showed up and then got invited to another event. And I had this guy I was talking to from Israel, and I'm not going to throw his name on here, but we had such a great conversation, and both of us were like, "Man, we want to talk about this later." But I sent him a message, and I was like, "Hey, I really enjoyed the conversation with you. I would love to just sit down over a cup of coffee and ask more questions." And then you send the text message into the universe and
Yeah.
and every once in a while, you get the miracle of the person actually looking at their phone at the right time and messaging you right back, and you're like, "Oh, good, we're on the same sheet." Other times, you wait 24 hours, and you're like, "Did I come on too strong? Did I maybe? Is this like? Am I being
Yeah.
reciprocal? Do I need to text them again? Let me check on them." No, so this all this kind of internal dialogue going on for me, and eventually, the end of the story is happy ending. I waited and I waited and I waited and you get the picture. And then eventually he was like, I had a great conversation too. Yes. When are you available tomorrow? And I was like, ah, okay, good. We can continue forward, right?
Yeah.
And, maybe that's a season of my life where I'm growing through subtracting, which is a whole other rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But anyway, go ahead. What do you think about that?
I think that I remember that many years ago, um, I had I knew a girl, and we went out a couple times, and I thought we had a good
Mm.
time. And this is before text messages existed and before cell phones existed. I had her phone number. I called her one time. She didn't call me back. Called her a second time. She didn't call me back. I called her a third time because
Hey, I've been there,
I thought
brother.
we had a good time and I thought everything was good. Um, so I didn't hear from her for a week, and I thought, well, what did I thought everything was going so well, and I thought she liked me, and I thought we had a good time, and I thought she was gonna, she wanted me to call her. All these things that went up inside my head. Um, and of course, she did call me back a week later, and she had like a tooth infection, and she had gone to the dentist,
Oh
and
my gosh.
so my point being that you never know what the other person is going through, and you don't need to try to interpret their actions or inactions because you probably don't know at least half of what's going on with them, which is probably why they're doing or not doing what you want them to be doing or not doing. People are, there are separate entities. As much as we have reciprocity in relationships, they still have their own stuff that they're dealing with, and we just don't know what it is. So, I mean, I learned that lesson way back then. Is like I don't need to spend any time worrying or twisting myself up in a knot, wondering why I didn't get a call back or I didn't get the response that I was looking for, because you just don't know what the other person that you're having expectations from is going through internally or personally or externally. Everybody's got something going on all the time.
Yeah, we can illustrate that. We have an example, right? You and me. Because when I was trying to get a hold of you and we were trying to make the podcast happen, I was getting ready for Thailand. You were getting
Oh
kicked
yeah.
out of your home or something like that. And I was like, man, I can't do it. I'm just too tired. And you're like, that's okay. I'm moving too. I'm getting kicked out of my, not, I don't remember the exact details. Not kicked out of your
Home
home,
repairs.
but there you go, home repairs. And so like we were both in transition and and I was like, well, I'm going to have to say something. I really don't feel like doing the podcast. I'm drained, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to be trying to keep my eyes open, falling over in the podcast. And I'm the host, so I was like, man, I'm just going to call it. And I texted you and or emailed, and I was like, well, I mean, the worst he can say is, never mind, I'm not interested. I don't want to be on your podcast. And I was like, going to be okay with that because there's always, new people. I'm like, hey, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. I'm going to be honest. But then
Yeah.
you said, I'm going through a transition too. And I was like, perfect.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Things work
yeah.
out.
Well,
Things
yeah.
work out
And
like that.
yeah, absolutely. And, I was thinking about your comment and thank you for sharing that story about your dating life. I mean, I don't know if you had to put that third mini on there. You were like many, many, many years ago, but hey, you do you. Um,
Yeah.
Maybe be a little bit more patient with yourself. That's my suggestion.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm saying that to my future self, like Aaron, you don't need the third mini.
Yeah.
You don't need it. But anyway, maybe when I'm in my 90s or something, I'll have to throw a third mini on there. But that's a sidebar
Hmm.
conversation for another time. But like, yeah, when I was thinking about that guy, here's I think the difference, and that's like I guess I can see in my story that I shared that I'm just like sitting there, like wringing my hands, waiting in my hotel room, you know, and for me it was like, well, let's go walk the streets of Chiang Mai. Let's go. What do you want to do, babe? Oh, I want to go check this out. I want to do some shopping. I was
Yeah,
moving still. It did not freeze me in place. And I guess that's the benefit of years of experience, right? There's no time ever when I'm calling somebody 3 times anymore. And I'm sure that's the same for you. You're like, I got time for one time. I'll leave a message. You get
yeah,
back to me, great. If you don't, you fall off the radar, and that's fine too. Whichever way you want to go.
yeah. That's the lesson. The lesson is you make your effort and you move on. And if it was supposed to happen, it'll happen.
Yeah, yeah, and let it go. That's what I've been talking about with growing through subtraction. Is kind of I was holding on and maintaining all these relationships on my side where I was the one that called to check on them, and I just let all that go.
Yeah,
Like if if there's no reciprocation, I'm not here, and it really becomes all about my peace and my time and my effort. And
yeah. Very true.
well, what other rabbit holes do you want to go down? Do we hit a topic you want to revisit?
Hmm.
No pressure.
No, these are all good topics. We're drilling down on some good stuff.
Well, and I was thinking about, well, I had one that's always my favorite topic lately, and it's listening and how powerful it is to listen. Well,
Yeah,
and yeah, so people have their civil wars, and they ask, and now at least with my wife, she's really patient with me, but with my wife, I'm like, babe, I'm not getting involved in your civil war. She might be asking me what that dress looks like. She might be asking me, you know, what the finances or what are going on with the finance. She might be asking me anything, and it's really true, and I'm being honest with it. I'm like, babe, I know that you're in conflict about this topic, and I'm not going to wade into the middle of your conflict. It's like getting between two dogs fighting. It's like, no, thank you. I'll be over here. And then one time, like I had said it 2 or 3 times, and one time she was like, well, how do I just stop my civil war? That's a good question. I was like, legitimately, I didn't expect to get any more talk time on that topic. And then it's like, well, how do I end my civil war? And I'm like, well, I don't know. How do civil wars end? I had to kind of think back to my ninth grade history class or college history, and
yeah,
I guess they happen because people start listening um,
no,
to each other. This side says to that side, the North and the South, for instance.
yeah,
And I'm not a history buff, but the North says to the South, well, you're going to have to kind of stop using slaves to maintain your land,
yeah,
or whatever. And they're like, okay, we'll do that. You guys are going to have to stop. They didn't get as big a list of some demands. The losers don't get as big a list of demands, or the
that's right.
perceived losers, but they get some things. They're like, hey, you got to stop shooting us. Okay. Or whatever. And, kind of listen and accept these terms. And then you get remarkable exponential growth when the country comes to peace. And here we are now. But
Of course.
so my answer to almost my one skeleton key for almost any problem these days is listening. What do you think about that?
I think that if you're not listening, it most of the time it shows, and the person who
Mm,
you're not listening to is going to notice, and they will treat you accordingly. Again, the concept of reciprocity plays into it, but also there's that sense of resentment or even a sense of dismissal, like that this guy's not listening to me anyway, so what's the point of even trying? At some point relationships break down if words aren't being heard, or feelings aren't being heard. Sometimes sometimes it's about sharing in the first place, talking in the first place, but listening is it's key. So a lot of times people are talking to you, and you're thinking about something else. And by the way, interviewers, I mean, I practice law, and sometimes I ask questions and I'm busy formulating the next question while the answer is coming. So
Ooh,
sometimes it's hard to listen because you're preoccupied or because you're working or whatever. But for the most part, if you want to have that relationship, even if it's uh, what do you call it, a relationship where you're not getting along, where you're battling against somebody, like a litigious one, you will always gain more by listening. You will always get more insight. You'll get more background. You'll get more context. You
hmm,
know, if you don't listen, you're missing something. You're going to miss something, and it's just going to hurt you down the road anyway.
right. Well, and I like to think of it, and I appreciate that you said that. It's going to hurt you down the road some way. I think of the consequences in a positive way, eh, if you do listen, I guess. And it reminds me of the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And and it's funny, I found it remarkable. Well, I find listening everywhere, of course. When you're looking for something, you find it everywhere you go. But and when you're a student of it, but in this book, like hostage negotiation, he was surprised as a man's man, as an agent's agent in the FBI, that he had to have all his negotiators take counseling classes because they found that listening was so powerful. Like they had a situation with three armed gunmen in an apartment holding hostages, and all they did was empathize through the door, and the guys laid down their guns and came out 2 hours later. They felt like they were understood.
Wow.
They felt like it was. I mean, and they're dumbfounded in that situation. They're just like, well, let's try this. And the hostage takers, they don't have a phone in the apartment. They don't have a way to communicate with them, so they whisper empathetic, you know, statements through the door to the hostage takers, and the hostage takers were like, "Hey, we're coming out. We're laying our guns down." And they were like, "What?" Like all we did is listen. We had the SWAT team ready to break down the door and throw grenades and snipers and helicopters, and we just need to listen. And so that was my takeaway.
Agree.
um, but it reminds me too of what you're talking about in litigation, where you got a counterpart on the other side of the table, and as you listen and understand them and label their feelings and maybe reflect them back to them, that you actually move, they bring you over to their side of the table. And obviously, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not
Yeah.
giving legal advice, but or anything like that. Um, Good. Thank you for laughing. I was hopeful that at least you would get that joke. But yeah, so the listening brings people to the same side of the table, and so it would make sense that listening would end war, especially internal war, as a person listens to themselves. And when we're talking about listening, we're not like the guy listening while he's watching the football game. Yeah, dear, whatever you said, you weren't listening. Yeah, you said
Yeah.
something about the styrofoam cups. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's not listening. That's maybe barely hearing and saving your own life, but that's not listening.
Yeah.
Listening is, what we're doing right here.
Yeah.
There's
Absorbing.
no, I mean, yeah, we're absorbing the full thing. I'm seeing your face. Maybe nobody else will because it's a recorded podcast, but I'm seeing your face. I'm getting your tone. I'm seeing your
Yeah.
eyes. I'm hearing your words and understanding them in the context of who you're sharing that you are, a lawyer, writer, publisher, editor, and all those different flavors. I'm listening to your words and I'm like, ooh, that's an interesting word. I'm saving that for in a minute when we go down another rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
so, and I have to say, there's not as many distractions. I am surrounded by Thailand, but it's a quiet place, and I'm probably being too loud as I normally am, but still, like, I'm not that distracted. I'm zooming out, I'm listening, paying attention. Because you said listening costs. It
Yeah.
seems free. It doesn't cost you time, but you pay attention, and
Hmm.
you give up the time and you focus your effort on the other person. I mean, where I'm really just listening to the little thoughts
Good one.
between what's actually happening for you and me in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. Paying attention, you're right. It's a you're giving in. You're giving something. Yeah. In Farsi, when you want the word listen, it's not one word. It's two words. It's
Hmm.
you say gush bede, which means give me an ear.
Hmm.
So you are giving something there too.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a cost,
Yeah.
but it's so worth it. I mean, to me, like you said, how worth it? Well, that takes me back to the book, and at the point I was going to, Never Split the Difference, was he's like, the most amazing thing happens when you listen. You will find what he called black swans. The deal inside the deal inside the deal that you didn't even know. An example would be you're trying to do a business deal with another company, and they have a magazine, and you can trade for non-monetary things. You're like, yeah, we'll do business with you. What else do you have to offer? And they could say, well, we'll run your business. We'll cover your business in our personal magazine, which is listened to by all these people. And so there's the
Hmm.
benefit, and we wage that kind of listening here as well, because I'm going to tell you when the podcast comes out, you're going to send it to your people and they're going to pay attention at some level. And
Right.
my podcast people are going to pay attention to your publishing company at some level. So,
That's right.
yeah. So there's these little black swan deals, is what he calls them, that there's no way to see them from the outside. But as you align with the other side, then they're like, your friends, and they're like, well, here, you can have some of this too. It doesn't cost me anything, and it'll benefit you for millions of dollars. Like, okay, thanks.
Take it.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's that generosity too. Being a little bit more generous than expected is going to gain reputation. You know,
Yeah.
this concept.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Thank you for sharing that Parsi with me. I'm going to remember that because I am an
Yeah.
international fan of listening to people and how you do it, which is what makes Thailand so frustrating is that I cannot understand. All I can watch is their facial expressions and their body language.
Tough
And
language. Yeah, that's a tough language.
wow. Well, we still got a few minutes left. If you want to think of any rabbit holes, or I could ask our second question choice. You got
Yeah.
options or any questions you might have.
Let's go. I don't know. I'm gonna look at your questions again.
Okay.
Yeah, I like number one.
Okay, let's do number one. What have you changed your mind about recently?
I changed my mind about sticking to gin. For a very long time, for 10 years, I only drink gin when I go out. Gin martinis,
Mmm.
gin and tonic. I like the flavor of it. There's a little fragrance that comes with it I appreciate, but to the exclusion of everything else. But this past couple of weeks, I've been reintroduced to tequila. And I think to myself, this summer I'm going to go back and revisit uh, tequila as a
Mmm.
drink to have. That's definitely something that I thought about. And I was like, you know what? I mean, I don't drink that much, but when I drink, I want to make it count. And so I thought to myself, I've been giving tequilas a short shrift, and suddenly I see a lot of gourmet tequilas coming out there, and I think to myself, tequila. So that's one thing that, let's see, did I answer the question? Changed my mind recently about, yes, I did. I changed my mind
Huh.
about that. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the summer. Well, hopefully this house repair thing is going to be worked out, and I'm going to get back to my writing groove, and every weekend I can relax a little bit. Haven't been able to do that in a while.
Yeah, we have to. Well, and maybe this is what you're saying, maybe it's not, but we have to put rewards in place for hard work,
Yes,
don't we?
absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes you can go weeks and weeks and weeks without a win and without a reward and without anything to sort of recognize the work that you do,
Yeah.
and
Effort.
especially
Yeah.
especially for writers. Writers spend 95% of their existence not being recognized and just doing the work. Maybe that's why a lot of them drink because they're rewarding themselves. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I know. Our rewards are killing us.
exactly.
Potentially, potentially.
You never
When you
know.
go outside of moderation, but yeah.
Absolutely, got to stay cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. Change your mind. And I fully support that. Like me and my wife are big fans of margaritas. Like
Oh yeah,
margaritas, and maybe you're talking about drinking it straight, but I don't think there's
I
any
don't know yet.
better.
I don't know yet. I'm going to be
Okay.
experimenting this summer. Yeah, I'm looking forward to making my own margarita and seeing how that works.
Wow. Yeah, that's a nice journey.
I'm looking forward to it.
No, I'm a kind of an old-fashioned kind of guy now. I Anywhere I go, I'm like, what kind of old-fashioned you got? Well, we got this special old-fashioned. Give it to me.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
one, but it's
yeah.
it's well, I find alcohol, and this is the thing that nobody ever talks about. I find alcohol really useful as a social lubricant. Now, you don't
Absolutely.
need too much lubricant, but you just
No.
a little bit helps with a lot of people, especially
Yeah,
the
definitely
veterans
does.
that I served with and stuff like that. You get a little alcohol in their system, or your old uncle who was in Vietnam or whatever. You get them a little bit of alcohol, and it's like they're starting to tell you stories.
You
I
can
love
you
it.
can see you can see the steam being blown off. You can see the tension leaving their bodies when they just have a couple of sips. They just relax. It's a shared moment you have with somebody, and it just allows you to
Yeah,
just open up and sit back a little bit. And that's really the best part of it. And that's what it was. I mean, abuse is abuse, and addiction is addiction, and those things run across the board. But I agree with you. It's a social lubricant, and it's a good one.
yeah, yeah. Wow. I didn't even get to explore any stories from you being a lawyer, but you might be like, well, it's boring. But usually with anybody that has like a career, I'm like, you have, like, I've had law enforcement people, I've had firefighters. Like, you have a funny story, you have a scary story, do you have, you know, what kind of stories you got? Think about it. But I didn't do that with you, and we're almost out of time. So,
Mm.
but do you have any stories you could share quickly? I mean, you've been sharing stories with me all day, so I will not
Law,
feel like I'm missing out.
legal,
Go
legal
ahead.
stories. Legal stories are rarely funny. They are
They're funny to
usually,
lawyers.
yeah, they usually involve angry people, and they
Mm,
involve people who feel like they've been wronged, or a lot of misunderstandings, of course, which is why listening is so important. But a lot of the stories are filled with tension and toxicity. So I haven't.
mm.
I mean, from a litigation standpoint, of course, I do transactional work, and those things can be fun because everybody's eager to make a deal, and they're eager to form a relationship, and those could be rewarding uh, without that toxicity. But it's a mixed bag. Being a
Okay.
lawyer, being a lawyer is a good profession, easily abused like alcohol. But in
Okay.
moderation, it's a pretty good job to have.
Well, and I really appreciate your overview. I think it says a lot. It says a lot. I mean, I picked up a lot, and I hope the audience also listens to the way you said things, and just so respectful, so professional, and like rising above it, like noticing it, like you're flying over with a helicopter. You're like, oh yeah, there's some toxicity down there. There's some really some tension, and it's like that was instead of no, I don't want to talk about it. You gave us something, and thank you for that, and thank you for that. So,
My pleasure.
wow,
Yes.
it has been such a treat to talk with you, Michael,
Yes. A lot
and
of fun.
wow, a lot of good rabbit holes, a lot of good mileage. And I appreciate you taking the time to be my guest today.
My pleasure, and I'm really glad that you made it happen because it was actually a really fun conversation to have.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you also to the listeners out there. And I call you listeners in with the best possible hope that you will really dive in deep here and go down rabbit holes with us and get some stuff for your life and for the people that you know.